Around America, there are hundreds of paranormal teams investigating cases. In central Pennsylvania, there's one team known for their abilities and results, Mo Valley Paranormal. Join us now for a look into the world of hauntings and how the experts investigate the occurrences. This is Mo Valley Paranormal Live on WBLF. Now, here's Dave Shannon and Tyson Lidgett.
And a good Saturday evening to one and all. Welcome once again to our regular Saturday get-together and discussion of the investigation of the paranormal and paranormal activity. It's known as Mo Valley Paranormal Live, and the guy over there is known as Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to have you along tonight.
He has several other names, but we won't discuss those on the air. And I'm Dave Shannon. I have several other names that we won't discuss in the air. But nonetheless, we get together once a week and we talk about paranormal investigation and also paranormal activity. And we cover the gamut from, and one of the things when we originally started the show was the idea of giving you information. If this was something that you thought kind of piqued your interest, you've seen it on TV or whatever, and you thought about doing this yourself, our purpose was to give you some ideas, things to do. And it's kind of evolved a little bit over the course of time. We still always revisit that because we know there's new people tuning in all the time.
Yes, hopefully anyways.
And yeah. Well, if we're to believe, what Facebook tells us every week, we're getting a couple, there's new people coming by every week. So we continue to talk about those kinds of things because we assume they're people that aren't interested in paranormal investigation. So we continue to put that information out there. And then we talk about shows that are on television. And the Dead Files had a very short run of about 6 episodes, but yes, Ghost Adventures is back with new episodes. And the Ghost Brothers are still popping the trunk on them ghosts.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that coming up as well. But as we talk about the people that may be having it kick around inside their head about the idea of becoming a paranormal investigator or wanting to do it on your own, we have a great way, and I shouldn't speak ahead. Are there still openings available for the upcoming lockdown at Clearfield County Jail?
There are. We have about 10 spots left. They're going to be open until probably midweek next week when I close reservations. But we do have spots available, and if you've never been with us on a lockdown event, I would implore you to come on out if you have any kind of interest in paranormal investigating. If you think that what you see on TV is the way things are, please come investigate with us and see what it's really like. Spoiler alert: it's a little more boring than what you see on TV, but we try to make it as educational as what it is entertaining. The old Clearfield County Jail is one of our favorites as a team and a fan favorite. It's usually quite active. We have had everything from phantom footsteps on the catwalk above us while we've been on the main cell floor, to disembodied voices, extremely intelligent flashlight activity, and PSP-7 spirit box activity, shadow figures. I mean,
cigarettes being smoked.
2 cigarettes that will smoke themselves. Yes, I mean, it's a wide variety of paranormal activity depending upon the night. We don't guarantee anything. We can't, because as we said multiple times here, the spirits are not trained circus animals or zoo exhibits for you to go in and enjoy. If they decide to interact and communicate, then it's going to be a good night. If not, we'll try to make the best of it. But it's a really good time. It's a 6-hour investigation. It's from 10 p.m. until 4 a.m. We have refreshments throughout the night and at the end of the event before I send you home. And you get to use basic equipment to investigate alongside the team. And it's essentially your investigation. You are our guests. We're there just to kind of, guide and help you along. But, you ask the questions and do the EVP sessions and all that stuff. So we really try to make it a good time for our guests that come along.
And remember this too. This may be it's not necessarily, we don't know what the future of the property is going to be, but it may be the last time you get to be inside to both appreciate the Clearfield County Jail and its historic preservation to this point, and the fact that it is, known to have paranormal activity in it. So, it's more bang for the buck, so to speak. You got the historical nature plus the paranormal nature of that property. We don't know what's going to happen to it.
No.
It's apparently going to be sold at some point here. And what will happen with it after that is anybody's guess.
Right. I mean, what occupies it right now is a land mapping service and I believe they're based out of Texas. And from what I understand from my contact there, they are just closing down their satellite, corporations of the Maine and, bringing it all back home to Texas. Well, they're trying to sell this building. They bought the building as a home base for this satellite corporation. So, the way
wonder
it
if
sounds,
that had anything to do, Tyson, with the Marcellus Shale development that they were mapping.
I don't know. I don't know if that went hand in hand with that in any way. But from the sound of it, like I said on here last week, the week before, they had this huge inside yard sale of a lot of their equipment. So I'm taking a educated guesstimate that they may have a potential buyer for the building. They're trying to clear stuff out as much as they don't have to move it back.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So once again, it's, take a number of things into consideration when you're pondering whether you want to join Mo Valley Paranormal for the lockdown on Friday, April 7th, and then make a phone call. What is the phone number if they want to be a part of it?
Sure. You can reach me personally to reserve your spots at 814-441-1898, and you'll be talking directly to me. Or you can message us on Facebook on our Facebook page, Mo Valley Paranormal, or you can email us at movalleyparanormal@yahoo.com. Either way, it works by, I will ask you for your email address. In return, I will send you the link for my PayPal account. You pay the payment, I send you the invoice, and you go on the guest list. Next thing you know, it's April 7th next week, and you're attending the lockdown with us. It's that simple.
Now, one of the things that I will mention, having had the privilege of being out to investigate with Mo Valley Paranormal on regular investigations, the biggest difference is the amount of people that are there. Normally, as a paranormal investigating team, Tyson has a nice, robust team. It's not too big, but it's big enough, especially if you're in a large area that you're trying to cover, say, a courthouse or something like that. It's, a good-sized team for something like that, but it's also a good-sized team, and it allows the team members, even in a smaller place, to maybe take a bit of a break, which sometimes you don't get to do in those bigger places. And you can take a break, and other people will go out and investigate, maybe in the same area you were. And the interesting thing about that is you end up getting different results. I can remember the one we were on, and I was in a room with one of your investigators, and we asked a lot of questions, and we got some flashlight activity. But then a couple of female members of Mo Valley Paranormal went in, and the activity really kicked up for them.
Yeah, and we do the same thing at the jail. You figure, being a jail, these guys didn't see women a whole lot. So, one of our favorite places to do it in the jail is the old solitary section of the jail down in the basement, where if we don't get any kind of question answers or anything like that, we will have some of the females of the group start asking questions. And sometimes that helps. The women will start asking questions, and we'll start getting responses because, these guys, we're used to hearing a man address them and ask them things. Well, now, a female who they don't, see regularly is asking them a question, so they might be a little more apt to, answer them than me. So.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works out. One of the other things I did want to tell you, I've been talking to a friend of mine about some of the experiences you guys have had up at the Clearfield County Jail. He told me about one of the trips that he took to Gettysburg a number of years back, and on the subject of cigarette smoking itself.
Yes.
So it would appear. And the one tour he was on, they went out, and the tour guide said, "You're a smoker." He said, "Light up a cigarette, and I'll show you something." And so he lights up the cigarette, and he holds it out, and he says, the tour guide goes, "Hey, Tennessee, we got some tobacco over here for you." And they wait a little while, and all of a sudden, the cherry on the end of the cigarette lights up. And then he tells my friend to sit this down on like a railing in the area. I'm not sure exactly where they were, but he set it down on the railing. He said, "Tennessee, go ahead. Take as much as you want. That's all yours." So the cigarette begins to smoke itself. And he explained to me that the tour guide said that the best they could determine in questions that they asked while this particular spirit was around was it was a soldier from Tennessee who obviously enjoyed smoking while he was alive. And so they don't have a name. So they just shout out, "Hey, Tennessee." And the spirit will show up and enjoy a couple of puffs on a cigarette. And it's a very interesting thing. But to me, that's just amazing to have that happen, to actually see something, that much of a physical interaction, because it's tough to wrap your brain around. Something has to inhale on that to make that light up. There has to be air being drawn from the outside into the cigarette to make that light up at the end to smoke it.
Right.
And so that whole thing just it drives me crazy. I don't understand exactly how it happens, but it does.
And that's just, we're downstairs in the basement. There's no air, and so, it's not like the cigarette is just sitting there idly burning itself. You actually see the embers of the cigarette ignite, and get bright. Just like you said, something is drawing air back through it. And it's quite impressive. I was really taken aback last year. It was the first time it happened when we did our Halloween lockdown. And I was kind of taken aback by it actually happening. But yeah, it's really impressive to see it happen. What will happen if we try again this time? I don't know. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe it will. But that's always the fun of investigating to see if something will happen or not. So.
All right, we're up on a commercial break. We'll take it here, and we'll be back with more Mo Valley Paranormal Live. You're listening to News Talk 970 WBLF. News Talk 970 WBLF. It is Mo Valley Paranormal Live, our regular Saturday get-together and discussion of the paranormal and the investigation of it. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, folks. Glad to have you along.
And we get together every week to talk about investigating the paranormal equipment, experiences, lockdowns that are coming up, anything along those lines. And then we talk about paranormal reality TV as well. So that is coming up, but we'll continue our discussion about paranormal investigation here. We were talking about the lockdown coming up and some of the things that have happened there at the Clearfield County Jail. And once again, I highly recommend that you folks become a part of that investigation just on two levels alone. First off, if you've never been there, there tends to be activity at that place. And we've said, we just said it in the previous segment, there's no guarantee, but it seems as though at least something goes on just about every time you're there.
Yeah.
And so that on that reason, the second reason being that it is an historic building, and since we don't know what the disposition of the building will be at point X down the road, and whether Tyson would be able to work out a negotiation with the new owners of the building to be able to go in and do paranormal investigations ever again is, up in the air.
Right.
Everybody has their own ideas about this type of thing. So we'll have to see how that progresses as we move along. But
you can be sure that I'll, put in a word with my contact to put in a good word if it does sell, to say, hey, maybe put a good word in for me that we might have a foot in the door here, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, this could very possibly well be the last lockdown that we do at the old Clearfield County Jail. Be sad, but it's quite possible.
So take advantage of the opportunity that's out there in front of you, all you would-be ghost hunters and those that are ghost hunters that have been on previous lockdowns. I know you have a lot of repeat people.
Oh yeah,
that come to the lockdowns, and I'm curious. Has anyone ever shared with you out of the lockdowns whether that's inspired them to go off and start to do some of their own investigations or not?
Not necessarily like that, but I mean, I've had people tell me that, they've dabbled with ghost hunting, going out to cemeteries and whatnot, and we don't, promote that, but, they, said that, they've bought a K2 meter and, a night vision camera and, something like digital voice recorder, just your basics, and have, run around different places, empty buildings and cemeteries, like I said. We'll get that, and people say,
Yeah.
well, I'm really interested in this. And every time someone does, we try to point them in the right direction. Find a group and, cut your teeth with them and learn and read and whatever.
And save money, because if you're going to get serious
Save
about
money. Yeah.
if you're going to get really serious, you're going to have some bucks tied up in
work
equipment.
overtime, because that's what, but yeah, I mean, I do have, begrudgingly a lot of money wrapped up in equipment, but I mean, it makes us a whole encompassing team with, evidence gathering. And I like that if we need something, it's there that we can use it. And, I know my investigators are, to their chagrin, having to cart that in every time we go somewhere. But I mean, it's, for our benefit that we have it to use. And, yeah, I mean, we, every time if somebody comes to me and says, well, how do I, where do I go? We always try to point them in the right direction of, listen, go to Gettysburg, jump on a couple tours down there, see what it's really like. This is what it's like. And, but it's different. It's a different atmosphere between a lockdown event with the public and when it's just me and the team somewhere investigating.
Oh, absolutely.
It's, it's business when we're trying to help a client out. Yeah, I mean, we're business when we do, lockdowns, but we're a little more, loose and, we're still professional, but, a little bit more open to the public and whatnot. And people have asked me, well, can we go on an investigation with you? And it's no, because, our client confidentiality is utmost importance to us. So, the more people that know about a case, the less confidentiality there is. So, but yeah, I mean, if you ever wondered what it's like to investigate, you've seen the shows, you're interested, you think that'd be kind of cool. And let me tell you what, I mean, there's been people on the tour that, have said that, man, I'm really interested in this at the beginning of it. And by the end, they're like, this is not for me. Because when you're in the pitch black and you're in a small circle of people of, 15, 20 people, and that the voice that just said hello was nobody in the group, it causes different feelings. And some people, it's not what they expect. And that's cool. I mean, if you find out, that's not really what trips your trigger, then that's all right. At least you found out, at least
yeah, before you dove into it,
right?
And got really disappointed.
Right, start putting some money in, And I always say everybody has their, OS moment, and something happens where you're like, wow, that was not expected, And for some people, it's a little alarming, and they realize that paranormal investigation may not be their cup of tea.
Which technically is good, because I would think they're coming in with that mentality of they're not accepting anything. They're good skeptics when they walk in.
Right.
And it's okay to have something surprise you, and maybe you walked in as a skeptic, and I mean a really hard skeptic, and then that happens and you go, okay, now your belief system is kind of screwed up.
Yeah. Listen, my dad was like that. My dad, old corrections officer at Clearfield County, hardcore skeptic, thought, everything with the paranormal was BS and, you're imagining stuff and whatnot. And, he tried to grind me up a little bit when I started the group. And I said, you know what? We're going to be doing the old jail. Why don't you come along? And Dad had his moment where, it was just him and I sitting down on the main cell floor. And looks like there's a fire somewhere in State College here. But, we're sitting on the main cell floor and just, regular questioning. I said, can somebody say hello? And 2 cells up from us on my left, very clearly was shouted out a hello from the cell, and nobody was in that cell. And my dad, looked at me and said, this
stuff just got real.
This blank just got real. And I said, yeah, this blank just got real, Dad. And I mean, at that moment, it changed his belief theory, his belief theories. And now, he watches the shows and asks how things are going with, the group and whatnot. And he's even come along in a couple, lockdowns after that. So, and we've seen that with different people, how they've come in as a skeptic and they leave as a believer, or at least willing to believe that some things that are happening are possibly paranormal. Our job,
and maybe getting to the point where they say, I don't want to deal with that. I didn't think it was real, but now that I know it's real, I don't want anything to do with it.
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, our job is done. That's
sure.
That's all we're doing, is trying to show people and educate them. But at the same time, we let them know this isn't something to be afraid of. This is just something that we as people don't understand. So that's why we're afraid of it. And, that's why we do what we do, taking the fear away from the unknown, and to show people that, what is here in the dark is here in the light. It's that it doesn't go away just because, or it doesn't show up just because the lights are out. So, it's nothing to be afraid of, and you can deal with it. I love the moments when we get a lot of activity and a lot of good activity happening. And I always say, who's afraid right now? And you'll get people put their hands up. I'm like, no, are you afraid for your life though? I mean, do you think you're going to die? And they're like, no. And then, where does your fear of this come from? And everyone says TV and movies. Bingo.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from.
Yep, absolutely. And you guys have done a great job in fulfilling your mission of taking the fear away from the unknown. If anybody has gone on a lockdown, you know that now. The only other thing I can say about a lockdown, sometimes there's a lot of security in a big group. And when you go do it on your own and you don't have that big group with you, that may be completely different for you too.
Right.
Strength in numbers, you don't have that when you investigate on your own. We'll be back with more Mo Valley Paranormal Live right after this. You're listening to News Talk 970 WBLF. News Talk 970 WBLF. Welcome back to our regular Saturday get-together and discussion of the paranormal and the investigation thereof, otherwise known as Mo Valley Paranormal Live. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody.
And every week we talk about if there are new episodes of paranormal reality shows on TV, we review those for you. One point of reference, we don't do the recreation shows.
No.
Because they're, first of all, as Tyson pointed out a couple of weeks ago, there are things that are done in the telling of the story to make it more dramatic.
Yes.
That probably have little to do with what actually happened.
Exactly.
And so we've kind of, those, if you want to watch those, fine. That's okay. Go ahead and watch those, and we're not telling you what to watch. We're just saying we're not going to spend the time reviewing those on the show because of the nature of making it more dramatic. So off we go. And we talk about the Ghost Brothers are in new episodes. Dalen, Jawan, and Marcus out investigating this past week at a place that I think pretty much anybody that follows paranormal reality TV
or paranormal anything.
Yeah, has seen and or heard about the Winchester Mystery House. As a matter of fact, our good friend that does the Sunday night show, and why is that all escaping me right now? He was with us at the Clearfield County Jail.
Oh, Eric Altman, Beyond Reality.
Eric Altman, and he just had an episode on that where the folks talked about the Winchester Mystery House. A couple of people that had investigated there, and we're talking about
not Beyond Reality. I said Beyond Reality. It's Beyond the Edge, right?
Edge, yeah.
Beyond the Edge Radio.
Yeah. And by the way, highly recommend that. It's it's amazing. Eric does that every week with his compadre out in Seattle. So it's an East Coast, West Coast kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And but they have a very good show. You can catch it in a podcast, whatever app you have that picks up podcasts. Their shows will show up on the podcast. Eric has had some trouble of late, I think, with his both his internet connection and some of his equipment. And I know he's posted on Facebook that he's been having those problems. So hopefully things are, turning around and getting on the up and up as far as Beyond the Edge goes. But these folks were at the Winchester Mystery House. And the big thing that everyone says, by the way, it's in San Jose, if you didn't know. And the big thing that everybody talks about is just the bizarre nature of the mansion. And one of the things the Ghost Brothers did, I think most of the television programs that have been there have talked about the unfinished part where Sarah Winchester finally ran out of money and couldn't continue to build the mystery house. And so there's this part that's basically just studs and, maybe some rough floorboards down and things of that nature. And in this particular case, the Ghost Brothers decided to, and, were able to investigate that part that was apparently the last part that was built when they ran out of money. So, but it was interesting. I think one of the things, and we've talked about this, the idea of the seances, and we've talked about we criticize a lot of the default to demonic attitude that goes on in the shows.
Yes.
And
it's just because I don't mean to cut you off, Dave, but it's just because it's just not the case. And like you and I have both said many times before, all it is just pandering to focus groups who want excitement in these shows.
Mm-hmm.
And, everything has to be demonic or malevolent. And, after the years of investigating I've done, I've never run across anything that I would think is demonic. And, it's just, it's a bad representation of the paranormal field as a whole today.
And I bring this up because they do a seance. Now, I will say this. The times that we've been investigating, you don't conduct any seances during your investigation.
No.
And it's not something that I would suggest anybody do during an investigation, because I think there is an opening of a portal, however you want to define that. It's a way for a spirit. Maybe a spirit would not ordinarily communicate with you, but a seance allows that barrier, whatever that barrier is, to be taken down. The problem with a seance is, unless you're careful about the way you do it, it opens the door for many different spirits. And there are, as Tyson has referred to them, a-holes in life, a-holes in the afterlife.
Right.
And they may not necessarily be demonic, but they may be a-holes. And we all know how much we love having a-holes in our life to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Don't invite them in out of the spirit world. That is basically my point. And there is that. It's never happened with Mo Valley Paranormal. It doesn't happen with many of the shows that I watch. I've never heard people talk about a lot about taking things home with them, other than on Ghost Adventures, that a spirit will go home with them. And so, it's a risk that I don't think you have to take.
Well,
I think
the bad part is, Dave, and my stance on it is the same with a seance and a Ouija board, is you are allowing yourself to become a type of conduit. You're giving up your control. So like when you're using the Ouija board, everybody has their hands on the planchette to be moved.
Mm-hmm.
You're allowing something to move your hands or the planchette to move to say something. And then with a seance, as this guy said, open up your minds and allow something to talk through your minds. I'm not relinquishing my control of my own thoughts and my body to allow something from another side speak through me. So it's not good as a whole, relinquishing your own power and your decision and control making just to be a conduit for something to speak over in our realm. You know, we have the technology, we have the ability to do that without these things. It's just, I just don't think it's a wise practice, either one.
Yeah, and I don't have the gray matter to spare to let someone else use it. I just need what I have, okay? I'm not giving up any of it. The reason I bring that up, a lot of the weird things that happened, Sarah Winchester was the last surviving member of the Winchester family, and of course had the fortune because Winchester rifles and guns were a major part of our move to the West.
Well, it's nicknamed the gun that won the West.
Yes. And so with that in mind, it got to her, she felt somewhat responsible for creating something that killed people. And so she was kind of bummed out about that. And then she got into this, I'm kind of afraid that maybe some of the spirits of the people that our guns killed are after me and whatever. And she started to build would have been just normally a mansion, but because of the way it was built, which it was being built like day by day almost. And all of the stories I have heard indicate that Sarah would have these seances in the evening and then would get together with the construction guy the next morning and tell him what he was going to build. And it was like, you're kidding me.
Right.
First off, obviously for the contractors, it was probably a pretty good deal because it's like, you're getting paid. It's the Winchester family. They got the money. So they just kept building it. Whatever you want, Mrs. Winchester or Miss Winchester, we'll do it for you.
Yeah.
And so, but that's just one of the examples. It's like you start to do seances and then you start to build something based on a seance, you're in trouble. So what it leads to is a very bizarre building where there are doors that open to the outside, like right off the side of the building. There are stairways to nowhere. There are doors that open to other walls. You name it. There's all kinds of weird things because they would start to build these things and then she'd have another seance and say, we're going to move on to this now. And so it just keeps building out and getting weirder as it goes along. Now, the Ghost Brothers show up and they invited someone in with them. I'm not sure about the Kayla connection, other than she is an investigator and had been there before, but they invite her to stay with them.
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, it said she was an investigator, but it didn't say like what group she was part of or what her foundations were. I don't know. It was kind of a out of left field too for me. So
she does stay, and she does seem to be. She's kind of an odd person, but she does eventually. She has an outfit of her own, which shows that she's been around the Winchester Mystery House. There's not a lot of young women that have period clothing that they can don in a moment's notice.
Yeah,
and she put on period clothing because you got to remember that Sarah Winchester was there in the 1900s, so that's the period clothing that she's putting on. And the Ghost Brothers have been utilizing the REM pod a lot in this particular season to get answers to questions. And once again, whatever it takes for a spirit to communicate. And if it's the only thing that I would see, and I bet Tyson was just talking about his crew having to take all the equipment into an investigation. I bet they'd love to have the Ghost Brothers equipment because from what I can tell, it's like 2 cases.
Yeah.
That's all they have.
Right. Right.
But they have really relied on the REM pod. Sometimes I think they overreact to the readings. The REM pod will pick up an EMF and it will display it as an LED that lights up and also make a chirping noise. And sometimes it makes these real quick chirps. And they're always automatically, and maybe they're right, I don't know, but it seems as though they really react quickly to anything they get on it. We'll talk more about Ghost Brothers and also Zach and the Boys, Ghost Adventures. We'll talk about that coming up. It's News Talk 970 WBLF. News Talk 970 WBLF, Mo Valley Paranormal Live is what you're listening to. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody.
Tyson is the founder and lead investigator of Mo Valley Paranormal. And, of course, there go the name Mo Valley Paranormal Live that we have for the show. But we get together.
Not very creative, but it works. So
hey. And it made for an easy logo fit.
Yeah.
We get together, talk about the investigation of the paranormal, and we also talk about paranormal reality TV. We're discussing the Ghost Brothers at the Winchester Mystery House, and they were joined by an outside investigator by the name of Kayla, who dons period clothing and goes into Sarah Winchester's bedroom to be greeted by the way the REM pod was reacting. It was evident that Sarah Winchester wasn't too happy about this woman being dressed in period clothing and being in her bedroom.
No.
Came off that way to me, at least. And so there were many responses as they were trying to ask questions. And one of the things, I give Dalen credit because he said, wait a minute here. He said, back away from that. I want to see if this is just overreacting to somebody being close to it. And he walked up to the same area where Kayla was and tried to get the thing to go off, and it didn't. So I got to give him credit. At least he eliminated the possibility that maybe the sensitivity on the REM pod was too high. So they did do that, and eventually there's something that hits the floor right in front of Kayla. There's a thump on the floor right in front of her, and it scares her. Which, to be what my reaction is, I don't know, because, it didn't happen to me. But, there was a pretty strong reaction to this happening when it did.
I was watching that, Dave. What I had a hypothesis what could have been happening was the period dress she was wearing seemed to be like a very, light, kind of like, I don't know,
almost a nightgown kind of thing? Yeah,
kind of like a material like that, where she just slipped it on and off over top of the clothes she was wearing. Well, I'm just wondering, one of the things that the REM pod will pick up is static electricity.
Good point.
So I'm just wondering if, her taking off the period clothing, putting it back on, may have caused some, a little bit of static charge over her clothing that was picking up being that close to the REM pod. But, I don't know. I don't know if that was, the case or not, but just one of the possibilities.
Yeah. Now, the thump on the floor in front of her, that was attention-getting, to say the least. So that was one of the things that they had done. Jawan and Marcus were off in the unfinished area while they were investigating in Dalen and Kayla in the Sarah Winchester bedroom. And they didn't find a heck of a lot there in the unfinished area, although they did hear some noises there. Not necessarily sure that because of the nature of that being unfinished and what the exterior conditions of the weather were that day, a lot of the noises that they may have heard in that unfinished portion of the Winchester Mystery House may have just been that stuff that happens, the way wood reacts to weather and what have you. Interestingly enough, what the fudge became a big part of the investigation at this point. The use of the phrase, what the fudge.
Yeah.
So anyway, someone else they managed to get to respond to them was a PSB, was it PSB 7 where they got the Dr. Norman response.
Yeah.
And so they thought that they were dealing.
It was the Ovilus 5.
That's right. You're right. It was the Ovilus. And so they basically, and they did ask some questions that were then responded to. So it looks as though this Dr. Norman, who was actually kind of on staff at this bizarre little building, he helped take care of Sarah. He was her doctor, and whatever staff was working there as well. And there were questions about whether some of this may be staff that had worked there, and it seemed as though they were getting a response from someone that may have worked there as well, by the name of Karen. And that was an obvious thing that they got also. So at any rate, they did have an interesting exchange between Jawan and Karen in the kitchen area, where Karen was obviously attracted to Jawan. Wouldn't say why, but she was attracted to him because they asked the same question twice. And the REM pods, they said, "Are you attracted to Jawan?" Deet. And then they, asked a couple other questions, and they went back to, "Are you attracted to Jawan?" Deet.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay,
Right.
that seems pretty intelligent to me. So, but once again, the part about watching Ghost Brothers is they don't take themselves overly serious, although I was surprised at Dalen's participation during the seance, where he was saying words that he was, sensing words that he
Right.
was getting. And that was a little bit different. That's down a different path for the Ghost Brothers. We'll see how that develops in future
Right.
episodes.
Right. If he becomes an empath too now, so
Yeah, really.
yeah.
Yes, the African-American Zach Bagans.
Yes.
No, we don't need that.
No. One's enough. One's
Yes.
enough.
Speaking of Zach Bagans and the crew, we move on to Ghost Adventures. They were in Guthrie, Oklahoma at the Stone Lion Inn, which was a mansion that was built by the Houghton family and was also primarily, I guess if you took the life of that property, most of the time it was a funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing that tripped my trigger when I first started to watch this is I felt, geez, I think Ghost Hunters was there. So the interweb is an amazing place, and it did prove that Ghost Hunters was actually at the Stone Lion Inn, and that episode aired in May 17th of 2006. Their results, I don't know, but there were interesting results with the Ghost Adventures crew. Now, one of the things, and Tyson started to talk about it, we kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. The idea of investigating in cemeteries is one that's, repulsive. Maybe that's too strong of a word. It's something that Tyson won't do, and for very good reason.
It's just, it's number one, whoever's there didn't die there. Number two, they're laid there to rest, so let them do that. And number three, the most important one and biggest one is, most area cemeteries have families that are still in the area. And, it's disrespectful should they catch wind of the fact that some paranormal group is poking around, walking over graves, trying to make communication with someone. Their response, I imagine would be and should be, why do you think my grandfather, mother, whoever is still around and wants to speak to you? So, we have never made it a practice as a group to investigate graveyards or cemeteries.
So that became a part of this because the owner of the Stone Lion Inn at this point, is it Becky Luker? I think is the lady that owns it. She bought it in 1986. Property was built in 1907, and as I said, a majority of the time it was a funeral home. But she bought it, and then there were stories in the newspaper. She started doing these murder mystery weekends, and part of the murder mystery weekend was to go to the cemetery. I don't know. But anyway, she was accused of doing demonic ceremonies and what have you at the cemetery. I don't know that she did that, but she has in some way formed a bond to a character from Guthrie, Oklahoma.
Yeah, it was weird.
And Elmer McCurdy, who was could we say hapless train robber?
Yeah. I would say
If you
so.
only get away with a couple of bottles of whiskey and $40 after you rob a train,
Yeah,
it wasn't a good day.
Right. You didn't research that train very well.
Yes. So, and as we stressed during this show, research is very important. So obviously Elmer didn't do that, but the way Elmer's body was treated after he died was just, and the same principle that Tyson's talking about, someone being put to rest. When they did, when the coroner did the autopsy, don't know why he did this, but the story was he had dumped so much, what was
Arsenic.
the preserve?
Arsenic.
Yes. He had dumped so much of that on the body, he actually mummified it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the body starts going around the country in sideshows and all of this stuff. And people would go and they just thought, yeah, this is something that somebody made up. You know, that's not a real person. And then it was hanging in an amusement park somewhere. Someone bumped into the arm and it broke. And then people realized, oh my God, that's actually somebody's body.
Right, because the bone was
yes,
sticking
it
out.
is. So, you know, the man's body was not treated with any kind of respect for 60 years, 61 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was toted around the country. So that's a problem that's there. And they eventually get into the investigation, and they go to the cemetery where eventually Elmer was buried in a cemetery there in Guthrie. And they go there and they're pumping sound into the ground in order to get Elmer to talk to them. I don't know that they had to do that.
Right.
Because here's the bottom line. Elmer was communicating with Billy and Aaron back at the Stone Lion Inn while Zach and suddenly I've forgotten his name. But Zach and
Jay.
Jay Wasley were at the cemetery. And so the bottom line is that, you know, he was already there at the Stone Lion Inn, or it would appear as though, and why you had to do that at the cemetery is beyond me.
And the thing is, you know, the officer said he was killed by homicide. It wasn't homicide. He was shot by sheriff's deputies. So I would have been more impressed if it would have said shot or slain or something like that, but he was not murdered. He was shot by sheriff's deputies.
And they tried to equate hanging with the fact that you know, when the arm was shot or chopped off.
They were making some stretches, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
No pun intended.
So they do get some other interesting things as they get more serious into their investigation. One of which is a door opening upstairs on its own. Nobody even knew it happened. They went back and reviewed everything afterwards, and it was like, yep, that door just opened. Zach heard some footsteps in the hallway. Crack Master Aaron had somebody do something with a crack in his butt. And then they had a door slam as they all got together to try to review some of the evidence. And we're done with our review of Ghost Adventures because we're out of time. It's Mo Valley Paranormal Live. See you next week, folks.
Good night, folks.